They've spent their lives preparing for this moment. The moment they step out onto this stage, sit down at this piano, and share their music with this audience. Over the course of 3 days and 9 concerts, 28 pianists will perform in the preliminary round. This is the 17th Van Cliburn International Piano Competition.
Good evening to you from Fort Worth, Texas, and welcome back to the 2025 edition of the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. It's been a really inspiring day here at the competition, and tonight we will hear our final 2 recitals of the preliminary round. Welcome in, I'm Buddy Bray.
And I'm Elizabeth Joybrough. Thank you for joining us as we witness more amazing music, followed by the award ceremony where the 18 quarterfinalists will be announced.
The 2025 edition of the Cliburn received 340 applications from talented musicians across 45 countries and regions. From this impressive pool, 77 pianists, ranging in age from 18 to 30, were invited to Fort Worth for live screening auditions held back in March. These auditions culminated in the selection of 28 exceptional competitors who are now sharing their artistry with us here on this global stage.
The preliminary round emphasizes the importance of making a compelling first impression. Each competitor presents a 40-minute recital designed to clearly establish their artistic vision for both the jury and the audience. A special highlight is Gabriela Montero's commissioned work, Rachtime, a 6-minute opportunity for competitors to deliver something distinctive and personal, firmly setting their artistic presence on stage.
We're going to take a quick look at tonight's roundup. It features 2 recitals. First up is Yangrui Cai, 24-year-old pianist from China. He'll take the stage here at 7:35 p.m. He'll be followed by Vitali Starikov, a 30-year-old pianist representing Israel and Russia. He'll take the stage at 8:20. And as Liz mentioned, at the close of this evening, we will announce the pianists who will advance to the quarterfinal round. As I said, the first of our 2 piano recitals will be Yangrui Cai. Before he comes to the stage for his performance, let's meet him to hear more about how he got to this point in his musical journey. Take a look.
I like audience. I like people listening to me, but when you are playing, you have to get into the music. You have to be yourself. When you perform, it is a communication between the performer and the audience, but I think most important is you have to play yourself. For me, piano is played for myself. I met my teacher Stanislav Yudanich when I was still young, and I was very interested in his style of performing. I listened. I'm a big fan of his performance, of course, and I want to have lesson with him, so I did, and I'm immediately fall in love. So I decided to contact him, and I asked him if I can study with him in Oberlin, and he agreed. So I moved to the States, and I start my school in Ohio, in Oberlin.
That's Yangrui Cai, who will presently be taking the stage here at the 2025 Cliburn. Liz Rowe, I see 2 things that I am super interested in hearing in this recital. 5 Bagatelles by the Australian composer Carl Vine, and of course, the WAGNER LISZT Overture to Tannhäuser. Good program.
Yeah, and unusual selections. We have not heard either of those works throughout the competition. And of course, he'll close that with Gabi Montero's Ragtime and starts with a Bach Toccata in D major. We've heard a lot of Bach throughout this competition.
In some years we do, and some years we don't. He was from a non-musical family, Yangrui Cai was, but he heard his friends playing the piano. He asked for lessons at the age of 4. At 15, joined the Jinghai Conservatory of Music Middle School, and went on to study with one of our winners, Liz.
Stanislav Yudenich, yes, a great winner at the International Center of Music at Park University, and he has won top prizes in all Chinese national major competitions. And here he comes to the stage, Yangrui Cai of China. And that was the penultimate performer of the 2025 Cliburn preliminary round, given by Yangrui Cai of China, 24 years old, performing Bach, Carl Wein, Wagner, Liszt, and Montero. Buddy, what did you think?
Yangrui Cai is sort of a slow burn, isn't he? I mean, it was, he came out of the gate with that Bach, which was terrific. It was beautifully crafted, elegantly crafted, and so were the Wein Bagatelles, but he really started cooking in the Overture to Tannhäuser.
Yes.
I thought, and there was some very fancy piano playing going on there.
Very.
He's extremely self-contained as a performer, but very assured, I thought, and that was an awfully fast Rachtime. I was kind of breathless by the end.
Virtuosity to burn, that's for certain.
It happens a lot here at this Cliburn, Virtuosity to Burn. Just another great performance leading up to the end of the preliminary round and the announcements of the quarterfinalists, which will take place later this evening, but not too late.
The preliminary round emphasizes the importance of making a compelling first impression. Each competitor presents a carefully planned 40-minute recital designed to establish their artistic vision for both jury and audience. A special highlight is Gabriela Montero's commissioned work, Rachtime. It gives each competitor an opportunity to deliver something distinctive and personal, firmly setting their artistic presence on stage.
Now we're moments away from our final performance of the preliminary round, and that will be the 30-year-old pianist Vitali Starikov, who is representing both Israel and Russia. Let's take a second to meet him.
It was quite natural for me to get into the music because music was always at home. My father is singer and my mother is flautist, and my sisters are also musicians. My first steps in the music was in a kind of children music band when I started to sing at the age of 3, like 5 or 6 years old. I started to play piano, and it was actually not much. Sorry. I mean, it just was like, okay, you have talent, and you probably need to try to play piano. And I said, okay. I mean, it looks fun, so why not? At the age of 13, I started to listen to music more carefully, and I started to enjoy. After that, I decided that I really wanted to be a musician.
Liz, what I like so much about Vitali Starikov is that he seems to really genuinely enjoy being a musician and a pianist. He's not tortured by any of it. He just really likes being in the presence of it. And of course,
It's all about.
Yeah, it really is. Wish we were all could be a little bit more that way. He's starting his recital with that F sharp minor Bach Toccata that he was playing so beautifully in his webcast interview. He made his concerto debut at the age of 10 and his recital debut just 3 years later. His dream came true when he was accepted into the studio of legendary Vera Gornostaeva at the Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory. He's just about ready to come on stage, and he's now studying for his artist diploma at Yale with Boris Berman. Here he comes to the stage now, 30-year-old pianist Vitali Starikov in this final recital of the preliminary round of the 2025 Cliburn here in Fort Worth, Texas. Returning competitor Vitali Starikov, 30 years old, representing Israel and Russia in his preliminary program of Bach, Montero, Chopin, and of course the Shostakovich Piano Sonata No. 1. Couldn't miss that. Can't miss it.
Really
right?
can't. There seems to be a trend in this competition with people really going for their last moments on stage, as if to put like an exclamation point on their performance. But Vitali Starikov brought so much intensity and fire to that Shostakovich Sonata to contrast with, you know, some of the more pastoral sounds in his Chopin Scherzo. And of course began with an effective Bach Toccata, but a fitting end to this preliminary round.
Absolutely, very refined playing. And with that performance, of course, we bring the preliminary round to a close officially.
Bringing the world's finest pianists to a global stage, free for audiences everywhere, is only possible with your support. This broadcast is made possible by viewers like you who believe in sharing the power of classical music with the world. Your generosity helps ensure that the magic of the Cliburn continues to reach music lovers everywhere at no cost. If you believe in this mission, consider making a contribution today. Visit cliburn.org to donate and keep the music playing.
Now, the first major decision of the competition will be revealed tonight, not too long from now, actually. Over the past 3 days, 28 outstanding pianists from around the world have graced the stage, each bringing their unique brand of artistry and passion.
Now, the critical task begins for our esteemed jury, made up of some of the world's most accomplished performers. Each juror votes independently without discussion, basing their decisions solely on what they've seen and heard over the past 3 days. It's a process designed to keep the focus where it belongs, on the music and the artistry of these incredible competitors.
Now, as we near the announcements, let's speak about the order the competitors have performed in and how that order is determined. Liz, we have a whole party about this, right? I saw you at that party. I know you were there.
Yeah, we were at adjacent tables.
We were at adjacent table. Well, you know, nothing's perfect in the world. Okay, so the draw party, there's some math here,
Yes.
there's some chants here. First thing that happens is a name gets drawn out of a nice big silver bowl. And
That's
the
right.
person drawing the names this year was Ralph Vodopek, our
Yes.
very first gold medalist in
Full circle.
1962. Now, what happens after the names are drawn?
So the person who draws first, or whoever's number one, gets their pick of the entire slots. So it's all on this screen, and it's basically, you know, starting at 10 in the morning on Wednesday, going to the final slot in the evening on Friday night, and you basically get whatever you want. So usually someone picks a slot on perhaps late on Thursday, maybe during the day on Friday. People tend to prefer a later slot because that sometimes leaves a more indelible impression on the jury. Others actually, whether by chance or just by intention, prefer to go on the first day because then it allows them all this extra time to prepare for the next round.
Our 18-year-old, for instance, voluntarily chose the very first slot. But I guess my point was there is certainly strategy
Yes.
here.
Well,
and
there's
opinion and so
exactly,
forth.
and there's strategy, especially for the ones that have the luck of the draw, the ones that are able to choose first. Once you're competitor number 25, you only have 3 to choose from, in which case you're
Right.
like, well, I guess I'll go here. And so that was really interesting because Xuanshang, the youngest competitor, he picked somewhere midway through the draw, and he intentionally chose slot number 1, which was quite a statement. It was very bold. It seemed to imply, hey, I'm ready, and I have nothing to fear.
Now, if I were Xuanshang, I would have done the same thing, but only just to get it over with, to put myself out of my misery.
That's right.
Basically. So 40 minutes in a recital slot. Let's talk about the strategy of programming just a little bit, because we had programming all over the map in this first round. And to a person, as I've said, the competitors told us, I just play what I love, full stop. Is there some strategy here, though, that you were able to suss out in this first round, just in terms of programming?
I think so. I think everyone has their unique strengths and what they feel represents who they are as musicians. You could see that there were some of them who were very bold about wanting to play something that was striking at the beginning. A lot of them took a more conservative approach by starting off with Bach, Usually there was like kind of the classic Bach starter. We never saw Bach kind of late in a program, right? Bach or Haydn or the classical works always went early. And of course, everyone wants to end with a showstopper. There were almost very few that had a sort of a fade out at the end, right? They wanted to like leave that very flashy conclusion.
One of the only exceptions to that was just off the jump this morning when Evren Özel
The Corelli
played
variations.
so beautifully at the end, and Mikhail Kambarov did the same thing, same
Exactly.
piece, Corelli variations. You really do have to be quite an assured musician, I think,
Yes,
to take
exactly.
that chance, to take that sort of chance to end your recital quietly.
But that also speaks volumes because you can tell the ones that are very secure in their artistic identity, they don't present this vibe of having to prove something. They're just there giving a performance, and sometimes that is more effective than someone who's trying to game the system. And I think also the placement of the Montero piece, the commissioned work, was also rather fascinating because sometimes people had it at the end because a celebratory flair to it, but some you could tell they made a strategic programmatic link between other works on the program. And of course, that's in some ways coincidental because you don't get the commissioned work until, not even 2 months before?
About 6 weeks, I think they had it.
It's not a lot of time. And by that point, you pretty much know what you want to program at the competition. So,
Speaking of Rachtime, we saw competitors play it from memory. We saw competitors use the score. What do you think is the virtue there? I mean, in terms of, I saw some very compelling performances of Rachtime from people using the score.
Totally.
So, do you think that comes into the equation of a juror do you think they remember things like that in your experience?
Honestly, for me personally, but this is, as a millennial pianist, I never am offended by the inclusion of a score. However, if you're more old school and you've always been trained to memorize things, of course there's going to be extra points given to someone who has, in that small amount of time, memorized and mastered a work of that complexity. You have taken a stab yourself at the score, and it is not easy. It's technically difficult, but even interpretively, you have to find your way through all the thorny and kind of repeated textures, and to kind of bring an arc to it. And so I think the ones that play it with confidence, with score or sans score, that's the one, and they made beautiful music out of it. And of course, the composer herself is on the jury. So even though they can't discuss, I'm sure she has a very clear idea of who she liked the most. And again, it's subjective. We don't know they're not supposed to discuss it with her, right? But
Right.
I think in terms of music or not music, what matters is that they're making music. And for me personally, I would have used an iPad with the foot pedal because page turners make me nervous sometimes.
Right, and if I had been the page turner, I would have been nervous just to put my
Exactly.
there are too many things that can go wrong
Right,
there.
but also Anna Genyushenev, who was the silver medalist last year, had a bit of a technical
It was
challenge.
a syncing problem between the pedal and the iPad.
And that is a nightmare. And in a way, we sort of presume that a lot of people opted for the page turner, even with an iPad, because they just wanted to avoid any technical issues. So,
Let's go back to Bach for a minute, if you
Yes.
don't mind.
absolutely.
This morning, again, to mention Evren Özel, he played the most protracted Bach that
Yes.
we have seen, a full partita.
Partita.
That is not a prelude and fugue. It's not a taste like a toccata, which is on 10 or 11 minutes, but
Right.
he chose the fifth partita, quite a substantial thing to do. And he played it so beautifully, but
Excellently.
that's taking a chance, I think, unless you are very assured in.
Evren was an example of someone who just has a very clear artistic presence. He's so refined and played with such command that, in a way, your sort of worry about him taking a challenge dissipates because you realize that he's playing it because he excels in that repertoire. And it's really interesting. When I just look at the programs and the program booklet, sometimes I make snap judgments. Like, even looking at his program, I was like, oh, this is a very conventional program. But he played it so convincingly that, for me, when I was experiencing it in real time, it was incredibly persuasive. And vice versa. Sometimes I'll see a program that looks so tantalizing and unique and original, and then in practice it doesn't quite work. Maybe it would on a normal concert stage, but in a competition, that 40 minutes is not very long. So you do need a very clear intention about what you want to portray. And as Jacques Marquis was saying earlier, the quarterfinal kind of offers almost a second half of a recital program, but a lot of times you won't get that. If you don't advance to the quarterfinals, you won't get that chance. So if you take it that literally, you're not going to show your full artistic abilities.
Right, right. There's so much to chew on here. We could talk about this for a couple of hours. But as we wait for the jury's votes to be cast and counted, we will be joined by Cliburn Backstage host Greg Anderson. Greg has been speaking with each of the competitors right as they come off the stage, and he's getting a very unique insight and perspective to the competitors.
First, let's take a look at the 2025 draw party and the anticipation that evening held for our competitors. This is where the competition begins. The draw. Many want the final slot. Some fear going first. And this is the moment when they'll find out, through the luck of the draw, exactly when they'll take their first steps onto the Cliburn stage.
And the way it works, we're gonna get a name out, and the first name can choose any slot of the grid.
That order is determined less than 48 hours before the lights come up on the first performance. This event, this ceremony, is where our 28 competitors will match choice with chance.
It's been suggested that I try to give you some encouragement or advice. As far as encouragement, my gosh, you're here. As far as how it turns out, nobody knows.
Each competitor arrives as an individual, but in this moment, there's camaraderie and shared anticipation. Behind the smiles and handshakes, the unspoken question, when will I play?
Kotaro Shigomori.
The draw isn't just procedure, it's tradition. Time seems to slow down here.
Angel Stanislav Wang.
As more names are called, your options narrow.
Chuan Chang Wu.
It comes down to a draw.
Oh, I've never seen that before.
You realize you can't control everything. You can master Rachmaninoff, conquer LISZT,
Federico Gadkrema.
but you cannot orchestrate chance. And then
Shangru Du.
it's done. The order comes into focus. Each competitor knows their number, but they will all strive to go beyond a number, to make their performance less about the time of day and more about the connection they make with the audience. The numbers are drawn, the order is set. Now, let the music begin.
I promised you Greg Anderson, and here he is in the studio now joining us live. Welcome to the webcast, finally.
Welcome, and it's so great to, yeah, I know, it's so great.
Back in the house.
You guys know each other?
I think I've heard of you.
I've heard of you.
I've seen you from afar.
What you been doing?
I have been in one pressure cooker of an environment. The last 3 days have been perhaps the most intense 3 days of my entire life.
How much have you
Saying a lot
slept
for Greg.
total hours in the last 3 days, would you say?
Maybe 7, maybe 8 hours
Across 3 days.
across 3 days. But the thing is, these pianists and this music is, I feel more alive than I've ever felt before. They have been joining me immediately after walking off stage, and it has felt so emotional. We're like locked in this room together, and some of them have been pouring their hearts out. Many of them are just in this heightened state, and I'm so excited for all of them, having listened to them, and then hearing them pour their hearts out. Like, this is what life is all about. I feel so thrilled.
Tell us what the range of emotion and opinion you get right after they've been into the fray there.
I would say this batch is extremely diverse. We have had some people come off, and it's like their mind is still on the stage. they can't even process where they are in that moment. And then there's others like Callum and Jason, and it feels like I'm just talking to a friend at the local CVS or something. They're so relaxed. And then others, they really want to get into the nerdy piano talk and just go over every last detail from their performance. Some of them, very uncomfortable, even using words to describe their music or their performances. They would prefer to keep that left to the audience. Some of them have just wild amounts of energy, others extremely soft-spoken, but I would say the universal element holding all of these competitors together is their desire for honesty, which you'd hope from any performer, but sometimes it gets lost in a competition environment. But every single one of them, I get the impression that it's the most important thing to them. They're not going to proceed in life unless they're following their heart. And it makes sense to me. I mean, if you're going to be a pianist and you're going to put yourself through this.
But I think it's also emblematic of Gen Z, right? Generation Z. They're really aiming for authenticity. It's not all about the show or trying to present a very limited version of who they are. They are pouring their whole hearts and souls on.
They absolutely are. And
they certainly told us that too before they played. Honesty came up over and over and over. It is their
doing what they love, playing what they love.
Their most prized characteristic.
What's been fun is then dig into what is it that they love about it all. And you can watch all of this, not all of it, we're editing it. In fact,
That's why you haven't been sleeping.
It's me. I've been editing these into little pieces that are most of them from this round are up on YouTube and on Cliburn.org. And those are focused purely on the musical content of their performances during the preliminary round. But we've also been discussing other topics that we'll be pulling together into vignettes to showcase later during the competition.
So there are some overarching themes that have emerged. You did not impose them, they just have emerged.
One of the interesting ones is just after this round is Gabriela Montero's Rachtime. It's been fascinating to hear everyone's thoughts on it. The universal theme, I've heard maybe 16, 17 times, people refer to the piece as a puzzle or a maze. And it's something, if it's a puzzle, it's something they need to unlock. And if it's a maze, it's something they enjoy this process of working their way, oh, that was a dead end, let me try this. And Gabriela Montero herself, in the program notes to the piece, described it as kind of a blank slate for the pianists. And she encouraged them to find their own interpretations. And so some of them really took that to heart. Some of them decided to aim for spontaneity. Some of them planned it out a bit more in a very calculated way. Perhaps my favorite was Jonas Aumiller, who told me that he played it for his girlfriend, and she said, "No, you sound too German," and encouraged him to think of it more Latin, with a little bit more spice.
Did anybody mention the name Martha Argerich when they were talking to you about the piece? Because she appears in the foreword to the piece.
At least 6 or 7 of them brought up Martha Argerich and her inspiration.
Who wouldn't be inspired by Martha? Going back to this idea about authenticity and the range of expressions and reactions, how often, almost like kind of roughly percentage-wise, were you surprised by the contrast between what you saw on stage and what was behind, and how often was it just like, oh, that's exactly who you were on stage, and I'm seeing the verbal kind of casual version of that?
There's some of both, absolutely some of both. Some of them seem so explosive on stage and come and pull you in a very intimate, heartfelt way, and then others mimic exactly what you expect on stage.
They're like the Greg Anderson. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's who you are. It's like, but these artists contain multitudes, right? So it's kind of fascinating to see how consistent or not consistent.
So fascinating.
We asked them also, before the whole thing began, we asked each competitor what their relationship is to the audience. Are you aware of the audience, or are they not there, or or just what? And the answers were all over.
Well, one of the things that has been a unifying theme is everyone's been talking about how much they love the lighting. Oh, would you ever guess?
That's never come up before.
A number of them, well, Federica Gabriela mentioned that last time the lights were brighter, and this time they were dimmer.
A BACH?
And it created almost a private space for them on stage. They're aware the audience is there, but it felt like
They were enveloped.
Yeah, and like more of a home or more of an intimate environment. That's been a universal theme. Another one is the piano, or I should say the pianos. Universal praise for the pianos. In fact, a number of them spoke of the inspiration from the beauty of these instruments.
Wow, you could tell.
Yeah.
Did any of them talk about the process of choosing one, or if it was easy or difficult to choose their piano? Or
You know, in the 28 conversations I had, we never quite got to that because everyone was still stuck on their hearts and the experience of having just been on the stage. And I really wanted them to speak to what they were experiencing in that moment. But as the competition goes on, I think we'll dig into some of that.
you've got goodies for us.
I have
You've got stuff for us to look at.
I have goodies. So I'd like to start showing a couple of the ones that we've been doing. We've been talking about this universal theme of authenticity. I'd like to start with Ryota Yamazaki's reel that I've prepared based on his performance and interview earlier. Why don't we watch it?
When I play piano, I feel like, oh, I'm alive. I try to express like all the characters and emotions, and sometimes someone is crying and someone is angry, and the climax is like exploding the emotions. That's my style.
It's your style?
I want to express everything I feel.
Well, your heart just goes out, right? I
That's a piece close to your heart, too. Yeah.
It is a piece close to my heart.
Do you play this?
Yes, in fact, I recorded it. But
During his Juilliard days.
back in the day. But his and everyone's soul, that's exactly the spirit I'm talking about, that energy, this...
Well, he just beams with
The
it.
generosity of spirit.
That's it,
Yeah.
that's it. That's what's made these few days so immensely rewarding, that from everyone.
He just seems so optimistic, right, about his future and the future of music and everything. Nothing else occurs to it. I mean, it's
Open-hearted.
just great.
Yeah.
Great. What else did you bring for us?
So I'd like to show a pair, two different videos. We'll talk about each one at a time, but they are in direct contrast to one another. It's an example of the variety of temperaments I was encountering backstage at the Cliburn. Up first, we have Yeonjun Chen. She walked off stage having just played the Shostakovich First Piano Sonata, and there was this fire burning in her. And so I began by asking her a question, which will be revealed in this little vignette. Let's show Yeonjun Chen's backstage reel.
What would it feel like to you if you had to hold everything back?
I can't. I don't think I could. That's why it feels dangerous when I go on stage. It's just,
You might erupt.
I feel how I feel, and I cannot lie about it. And yeah, my just going through like roller coaster. You know, sometimes I'm there, and then I'm like woo, and then sometimes I'm there, and nothing works. I'm just not good at pretending. I don't know. I wanted to show the audience all sides of music.
can I just say that in the moment when that was happening, I was like, yes, I just want that energy on this stage. And we've seen a lot of very finished and refined and very well prepared and kind of proper playing. And I was just like, yeah, girl, like just like rock it out. And it seems like that's just who, she can't help it, but do that. That's who she is.
You couldn't not listen to her. You couldn't not watch her.
It's just so riveting.
Absolutely. Now we're going to contrast that with somebody who just loved the beauty of a small, tender moment. Up next, we have Mikhail Kambarov's interview and paired with his performance of the Corelli variations. Let's give that a show.
I mean, I feel more comfortable in slow music than fast. Because then I felt like there is nothing else except music. I mean, of course, the D flat major. I think this is the, I don't know how you say it in English, but the golden. You know, in the art, there is always.
Oh, the golden ratio.
Yeah. I think this is the duration, and yeah, it's just love.
Well, we loved him on this side too. I mean,
we're all just kind of swooning.
And
I get all teary-eyed.
Right, but there's that quiet assurance that he has. He is very assured, but also his voice is soft-spoken, and he's not trying to force you to do anything. But
right, and just the soulfulness. I don't know, there's something about, sorry to say, but in the society and the patriarchy and men who don't want to be vulnerable, you know, and kind of show the depth of their emotions, and he just displayed that on stage and off, clearly.
Yeah, and what's so impressive to me is this is a huge competition. So many people are watching. The world is while listening, and
never heard that before.
Never. The world is listening.
Very clever.
There's an incredibly talented, amazing jury critically assessing you. And I personally, when all that pressure's on, sometimes it's harder to be vulnerable. And I think my impression with all of these is they're actually accessing the vulnerability as a safety net. It's like, this is my safe space amongst all of this chaos, to be alone with my heart and my sensitivity and my vulnerability, which is really a brilliant strategy for handling all of this.
I was going to ask, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, not even a strategy, but just a really wise human way of going about life. You know, we can't control the outcome of anything, but all we have is what resonates in our hearts and souls, and to, you know, it sounds corny, but to stay true to that. You know.
I was wondering, when you said the word strategy, it made something fire, and that is that, I mean, I wonder if this attitude is natural or if it's something that has to be arrived at. That kind of, I'm going to just show myself. There is a certain amount of bravery in doing that. It's, I mean, there is surrender in it, and there is bravery in it.
And self-trust.
But all of that is not natural for most people. And I wonder if it's younger. Do you think it's easier for younger people or not? What do you think?
You know, I actually was just a minute ago, Yangrui mentioned returning. He actually felt more nervous the second time. Something about age had increased the pressure, and I can understand it's almost become more important to them as they age. And when Jason Momoa was talking about his whole life was building up to this moment, and it's so much pressure to take on.
Well, there is more at stake, of course, the older you get, but also the older you get, the more you know that you don't know, and how much more there is to know, and all that. And
you know, who comes to mind is Yun-Chun Lim, right? The gold medalist from last year. There was such a purity and an idealism, you know, which that just might be him because he's a rare soul. But I think the fact that he was 18 at the time, it is easier to be more idealistic because in a way you haven't been weathered by the world and by life. And there is, when you're older, you know, just with the matter of time, like this is kind of your only chance. You know, you might not be able to apply again, only chance competitively. But then it seems more like you put so much work and investment and time into this endeavor. And so there's more pressure with that.
There is. I was just speaking about them playing for the jury. I would like to show another video that demonstrates some of this thinking that's going on in their heads. This is Yangrui Cai talking about whether or not he was playing for the jury. Let's watch his backstage reel.
You know, I usually nervous about a very popular piece. You know, like most of pianists, they try to avoid the piece most people play. But I didn't feel that way about Brahms because I love this piece so much. I learned it during a very hard time of my life, so I think it's very close to me, this music. Actually, I put it this way, I'm not afraid to be criticized on this piece. You know, because I don't care like how they think because it's very personal music.
Yangrui was so memorable. That program that he constructed was a memorable one. There was contrast in every moment. There was this, and then there was that, and then a different vibe in every piece, a different compositional tradition. That is a thinker.
Yeah. Do you want to guess whose idea it was? Gold medalist Stanislav.
Danish,
yeah. With whom he studies.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And an excellent programmer.
Excellent programmer, and so an important person to listen to when receiving advice on programming.
He has quite a few students here, which means that he's doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely,
for sure.
doing something right.
True artist.
I found it so fascinating. You know, he had traveled all the way here, and he was going to play a piece and not care what the jury thinks. I just love that. I don't mean that in the in some way I care what everyone thinks because they've traveled to see you perform. I want them to have a really good experience, but he's trusting himself solely to that vulnerable moment on stage and not second guessing what does the jury want to hear, which honestly for me when I did competitions back in the day was the thing I struggled with most. I would be on stage and I would start playing for the jury instead of myself, or even the audience. And
then the outcome wasn't great, right?
Yeah. You know, that's just not the way to play. So I really admire his approach there.
I think he's quite like that in person, right? I mean, we spent 30 minutes with him, and he seems quite like what you're saying. He is very self-contained, and he's pretty sure that he knows what he's doing. So, yeah.
Props. Yeah.
Props, yeah. Absolutely.
Mega props, honestly. I have a couple more. These next two are all about the risk-taking that everyone's enduring, or I don't know, they're taking gambles just by being here, but on stage is, you every moment on stage, you have the opportunity to take a risk. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. We're gonna start with Magdalena Ho, who I have to confess was very disappointed following her performance. I'm actually saving some of her interview for later. I asked her, is this really what you want to share with the world? And she was adamant that she wanted to be herself, and that included telling the world how she felt about her performance. This will give you just a taste of that. Here's Magdalena Ho's backstage interview.
I really love this piece. I really, really love it. You can imagine being in like a dark church and you hear an organist improvising and then some divine voice speaks to you. I don't know if it spoke today though. I'm going to be honest, everyone else is going to be talking about how they feel and they probably feel quite good and they're going to be talking about the highlights. So I think for the audience that watched this competition, you know, they are gonna see the good moments, but they also have to see the bad moments, because not everyone's gonna play 100% in the competition. It's good to take risks, and that taking risks means accepting the possibility that it could also be terrible. But that's the fun part, right?
And we'll just note that we thought she was great. On our side, we thought she was a very compelling performer to listen to.
I personally was sort of surprised when she walked off and there was all this rapturous applause and she almost seemed to sort of disregard it, because I thought it was such a beautiful and sincere and heartfelt performance with, you know, nothing obviously disappointing. So, but
was she specific with you about what she didn't like, or was it an overarching thing?
Well, one of her first quotes was, "I don't know if the Cliburn International Piano Competition has heard so many wrong notes."
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, very sort of perfectionist or critical.
I do believe it went beyond that. I think it was her mental state wasn't what she wanted. In fact, I asked her, you know, what is it like on a good day instead? And she said, well, that's when I'm one with the music. Mm-hmm. And something in that moment for her didn't feel like it was one. And it was honestly a struggle for me. I, of course, could relate, because how many times have we walked off stage and wanted to scream? Yeah. But I personally had such an emotional experience listening to her perform, and so to hear that disconnect, that vast disconnect, it was disruptive for me, and made me question things like, but I don't believe it takes value away from all of our experience with it, if it was really good. But it's fascinating to hear how she felt, and it makes me really curious what would have happened had she connected with the music.
I wonder, you know, there are so few nights in one's life where I think we can really say, that was terrific. I nailed it. And to have the goal of merging with the music, which seems to be her goal, that's even rarer, right? I mean, there have been a couple of times in my life where I feel that I have accomplished that. I don't know if anybody else felt I did, but I felt I did. But that I've had a lot of nights on the platform, and only a couple. But
I admire that bravery, because so much of the people that do what we do, we know that feeling. Mm-hmm. And for her to admit that in this forum is, I mean, just utterly honest. And just from our perception, Magdalene, if you're watching, it was so moving, it was so just truthful, that I hope that brings you comfort.
Dude, I really hope we get to hear her again. In fact, I hope we get to hear everyone again. Mm-hmm. So she, as she said, you know, she took a risk and it didn't pay off, but I guess that's the fun of it all. I want to turn our attention to somebody who took a risk, and I believe it paid off for him. Here, let's watch Aristo Sham's interview backstage with me.
I am a sort of person, I cannot control the number of risks I take, so if I'm in the zone, the risks will be coming. You know, since she's an improviser, I used to improvise myself a lot, and I definitely improvised a lot on stage with the material, which lends itself to improvisation anyway. There's so much to play with.
That's Garbo, right? I mean,
that was the Montero there, but yeah, that wasn't even the one.
That's Garbo, right? And that was what we were just slack jog when he played Scarbo, but my God.
So was I. But he in particular was so excited about the Montero piece. Oh. And actually one of the things I really aimed for with all of the interviews was to get them to talk about what they wanted to talk about with their performances, and that's what I married with the footage. So if you're disappointed by the selections or the conversations, in general, I tried to aim for the pianist to guide where these went. But
tell us what he said to you. Tell us what he thought about everything. And
Aristo?
Yeah, after he was through.
I will confess that was a million years ago, and I do not remember every single detail from his interview.
I mean, honestly, there was this ease. I mean, even during the hardest moments of the Montero and then the Ravel Scarbo, it was just like, you didn't even see a drop of sweat. I mean, it was just...
Yeah, he walked. What I do remember was his joy. He walked off and was with me, and he was smiling. It was infectious. This energy.
So we had a ball.
Yeah, he had a ball.
Yeah.
He's 29 years old. We were just talking about aging and being more in your self-critical thing, kicking in a little bit more with age, but not with him.
Really,
seemingly. That when you play the piano like that, though. Wow.
What I found so interesting was this idea of risk-taking. Everyone's taking a risk being here, but he committed to the risks, and obviously they succeeded for him today. But for me as a listener, I want to hear those risks, and I think that's like the thrill of live performance in particular, because sometimes it doesn't work out, but that's the magic.
Yes.
I tried to tell that to Magdalena, that it's real. If it doesn't go well, it's real. And sometimes the heavily edited recording might be so thrilling because it's so perfect, but at this point in my life, I love being in these environments with real humans. The virtual world is gone, and that vulnerability and the mistakes, the flaws are a part of it. And I think there's a beauty to it.
I would posit that many of you out there are not watching necessarily to find out who wins, but it's for this very reason. You want to see the risks that these musicians are taking with their performances. You want to see those magical, irreplaceable, like inimitable moments that you can, it's like, this is the one moment in time that you can hear this happen, and it wouldn't happen tomorrow. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes this competition so compelling. Sure, in the end, there's going to be a ranking, right? But even that's subjective. But what lasts in our memories are those moments when you're like, oh my gosh, they just laid it all out. And it doesn't have to be in the most like flashy, obvious way, but it's just more that sort of the commitment to the message of the music and to their own investment in the music.
It's just very hard to keep all that going in the context of a major international. Tell me this. When they sat down with you and when they ended their time with you, were they a little calmer than when they came in, do you think?
Some yes, some no.
Did you stress them out, Greg?
Goodness, I do actually confess to feeling bad for them to have to enter into this cave with me for a few minutes after their performances, but for the bulk of them, I think there was it was a nice opportunity to digest, to cool off, and then head out to meet their adoring fans.
How many of them did you ask them about how they were going to kind of deal with the post-performance letdown? Like, were they kind of all about, yeah, I'm going to jump into my next program, or were they confident, like, yeah, I'm going to chill and
again, a bit of variety there. We talked so much about the music and about these heavy issues that...
The substance.
Yeah, that the idea of how they were going to celebrate almost felt trivial to jump into that. But what I did notice is that many of them spoke about aiming for some semblance of balance. A lot of them are friends, so they're trying to get together, to do social activities, to cool off, to just find these opportunities to divest from all of this.
Can we nerd out for a minute, though? And can we talk a little bit about repertoire? Because we know that you're a piano rep junkie, as we are. But what were your impressions of these programs in this round?
Well, I think that a lot of people aimed to have variety, to show the full gamut of what they can do, so that in the later rounds they can start isolating particular topics. But Chae Young Park in her words, she put all her eggs in one basket with that late Russian or 20th century Russian music in the Prokofiev Sonata.
That was the 8th Sonata,
The 8th
right?
Sonata.
The 8th Sonata, which was an interesting strategy, but she, again, loved the piece so much. And she appreciated that it had a variety. And she said, I'll get to Mozart later. But right now, I'm going to show this single side of me.
Wow.
And then we heard, we were transcription heavy this time, which was great.
That's our
like
jam.
My transcriptions.
Jarre played that multi-hyphenate Danse Macabre, Saint-Saëns, Liszt, Horowitz, and there was quite a zhuzh there by Vladimir Horowitz on it.
There was another zhuzh by Horowitz with the 15th Hungarian Rhapsody.
Right, that was David Krikuli, I
Yes.
think,
Right.
that played that.
We heard the Tannhäuser transcription. We heard the Faust. There's a lot of Liszt transcriptions.
Yes, there were.
Chacon. We got one of those.
That's right.
How did you get involved with transcriptions? I just want to bracket for a minute. How did you
Just
get
a little
involved with
bracket.
transcriptions?
It was a necessity, if that makes any sense. The two of us wanted to, we started with as a two-piano team, playing music for two pianos, and then got invited to play concerts on one piano. And we found the repertoire for one piano to be a touch lame.
Or shall I say quaint?
Quaint.
Not so you'd notice, but a touch lame.
A lot of it is meant for a home environment, and we were looking for something meant for the grand concert stage. So we said, I think what we want doesn't exist, so we have to write something ourselves. And that was the moment that we just forced ourselves into the landscape of transcriptions, and now it is my life. In fact, Jarre, last summer, helped premiere a piece I wrote for 16 pianists on 8 pianos.
Veda was in that.
Off in Aspen.
Arivardi, yeah.
And that was loosely...
Was it Stars and Stripes
No.
Forever?
I'm going to go with loosely based on. It's more of the fireworks that exist around Stars and Stripes Forever.
We heard fireworks
Something you
here.
said sort of fired something up here, and it is that I wonder how many of these kids, they say they want to play what they love, full stop, what I feel that I am most honest with.
Yes.
I wonder how much they take the audience into account in real life, IRL. I wonder how much they take the audience into account when they're programming. That's a huge thing that I think we have to grow into. We don't think that way always.
Well,
what do you think about that?
Elia Cecina earlier today specifically mentioned programming a uplifting, joyous first round because he thought that was a gift to the audience, something that they would appreciate, especially amidst the bustle of the preliminary round.
Elia told us earlier before the competition started that he does a lot of outreach. That's sort of his thing, playing for children, playing for underserved populations. So,
that makes
of
sense.
course, he's wanting to connect with the audience there, and he did spark joy in a lot of people, and he likes it himself. It animated him.
What do you think about the inclusion, or maybe lack of inclusion, of sort of newer music? Right, because I felt like it stood out when we heard, oh, there's a Ligeti etude, oh, there's an Unsa Chin, but it was more of a rarity, which in 2025 is kind of notable.
There were a lot of 20th century pieces, but not so many 21st century. Of course, we had the Montero in every program, so I look forward to maybe some more 21st century pieces later on. Maybe people were saving it. But Sung Ho actually commented on playing the Unsa Chin etude. To him, it was so important that he felt it was his obligation to represent these underserved composers, because he said their music is so incredible, they put so much work into them, and yet people don't know it exists. And so female composers, black composers, it was almost a life mission of his. He happens to be able to learn music extremely quickly, which makes that a little easier for him.
And plus, which the piece was great. The Unsuchen Etude was great, and we've never had music by her at this competition. He has, for his next round, if he makes it, a piece by Chen Yi, a composer who's lived in this country a lot in her life. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to remind you of what happens across the scope of this competition. We're moments away from hearing the announcements of who the 18 quarterfinalists will be. Now, let's just take a moment to review the formatting and the rule structure for the preliminary round that they all performed in. Take a look at this.
Founded in 1962, the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition has launched the careers of exceptional young pianists throughout its 60-year history. Since its inception, hundreds of young pianists have come to Fort Worth hoping to leave a lasting impression on audiences and jurors alike. This year is no different, as the best and brightest young pianists from around the world have landed in Fort Worth, Texas, ready to start their competition journey with a 40-minute recital. Here with me today is pianist Daniel Shu, bronze medalist of the 2017 Cliburn International Piano Competition. Daniel, you've been here. You've been in this position before. What does it take to kick off a competition of this caliber?
With a competition like the Cliburn, the journey starts long before the preliminary round. If you're like me, maybe you've watched the documentaries growing up. Getting to the Cliburn always feels like a dream, and coming to Texas is almost like the reward already, you know? You've done the screening, you've made it in, you're in the final 30. And now you're really locking in to play that first 40 minutes and to really make your first impression.
In the preliminary rounds, each competitor has chosen their own repertoire, things that really represent them, that showcase their artistic individuality, their creativity. Talk to me a little bit about programming. What are the strategies in place, and how do you kick off this competition in the best possible way?
There are a lot of different strategies. There is the start with my favorite pieces and stack everything in the front. Play all the technical stuff early, or play all the slow stuff early. And then there's my favorite strategy, which is to say, you know what? Just go out and play whatever. If it's good, you'll pass. If it's bad, you won't. It doesn't really matter. So this is really the round where you make a first impression and go out there and show, meet your audience with who you are and what you're really about.
Another significant element of this preliminary round is the addition of a newly commissioned work, this year by Gabriela Montero, called Rachtime. Back in 2017, you won recognition for your performance of the commissioned work.
The commission work is a unique portion of the Cliburn's repertoire selection, and when you are preparing your recital for a competition of the Cliburn's caliber, you really take things out from the comfort bucket. Whatever you love and whatever you've played many times before, right? You want to make a good first impression. You only have a couple of months to prepare for the competition, and you really get an opportunity to interpret something new, something that no one's done before. And you get to do so with 29 other competitors, and you get to do so with the composer in the audience. It's honestly a really fun time. It's scary at first. Once you're over the hump of, man, I gotta learn this in 2 months. Once you're over that hump, it's great.
That's one of our bronze medalists, Daniel Shu, talking to Christina Allen, who's been the onstage announcer at the Cliburn. We're sitting with Greg Anderson still, and I want to talk to you, Greg, about where we can find all this content that you're developing and not sleeping for.
Thanks, buddy. I should actually preface, there's a lot of people not sleeping here. But you can find...
Greg is looking remarkably fresh, don't you think, for not having slept in a week?
We're all just adrenaline fueled at this point.
Yeah, and as I said, there's stories in the music that are keeping me very alive right now. There's at least 26 of them up, of these little vignettes you can find on the Cliburn YouTube channel, as well as cliburn.org. And I'll be editing the last 2 interviews I just did after later tonight. And then keep following there. Some of them will actually get posted to the other social channels as well, and then later next week we'll start pulling out those vignettes that talk about some of the deeper topics. And I know we've been talking about it right here, but you really do want to hear it in their words. And sometimes it's not even their words, it's their face or their expression that reveals so much. And I'm just in love with all of them, and I want you to be too. And I think that this will give you a sense of who they are beyond just what you're hearing through the fireworks of their pianism.
I can't wait to see them. The videos so far are so compelling, and for me, and I imagine for many of you, it's all about the humanity, not only the artistry, but the humanity, because they're so deeply intertwined. Now, because you're here, and I know how much of a piano nerd you are, and clearly so are we, give us the inside scoop on who the nerdiest sort of piano kind of aficionados are in this crop of competitors.
There are a number of them. There were a number that just wanted to go in great depth into every little detail about the history of a piece, the inspirations of a piece. A few of the standouts, I would say Piotr
Alexievich?
Yes, definitely him. There was Carter Johnson, had endless fascinating tidbits to share about the pieces he was playing. Jonathan Mamora, he himself is an educator, and so he's very articulate and expressive about talking about music. And then Angel, Stanislav Wang, had really interesting insights into all the pieces he was playing. He thought about it on an intellectual level and articulated it so well.
Can we talk about Carter Johnson, the American pianist, because he's fresh off of a victory at the Dublin International Piano Competition, literally days before coming here, but also he's juggling quite a lot in his personal life.
2 kids, right? A 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
And he's working towards his doctorate at Yale University.
Your alma mater?
Yes. And he did make a comment about how juggling all of that made practicing especially difficult, but it's taught him about efficiency at the piano. And more importantly, his life and his children and his wife have given him great inspiration in the music he plays. He was talking about how he shared some of the music of Prokofiev with his young kids, joking that, well, I'm the dad, I can do that. And they would get excited and start singing the melodies and getting really excited about particular melodies. And so he'd be practicing, get frustrated, and at dinner his children would start singing the melodies, and it would just instantly changed the way he thought about what he had been practicing, and I thought that was really beautiful.
Future Cliburn competitors, perhaps?
Could be.
You can tell that story later.
Carter has such a healthy relationship to practicing, because he said, look, sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's not even that.
He did mention, though, recently he's been practicing quite a bit, because, in fact, he said, I don't know the last time before preparing for the Dublin that he got 8 hours of practicing in a day, but he's really been pushing it to prepare for these competitions.
Can we talk about that for just a minute? Stick a pin in that for just a second. I want to talk about practicing and the amount of practicing. Is that what you were going to say?
Work ethic.
Get out of my brain. Okay, I want, because, the new sort of gold standard seems to be not 8 hours, but 10 hours. We hear that a lot from these young people, 10 hours, 10 hours, 10 hours. Ever since Yun Chun
I was going to say, I blame Yun Chun for that one. They were resistant to mention the number of hours. And eventually I'm not going to ask, since it didn't seem to be too much of a focus for them. But we did talk about practicing at times, and some of them complained how they struggled to practice efficiently or with great intention. And then there were some who talked about how they used to hate practicing, but in their old age have grown to really love it. It's an opportunity to be with yourself. Again, it's this moment when the technology, this virtual world disappears, and instead you're just reflecting on how beautiful this world is. And so I thought that particular quote was especially touching.
Well, that resonates with you, right?
That's me.
Talk about that all the time.
I love to practice because it's that moment. It's that moment just to yourself. It's like meditative almost.
Presence, sheer presence.
It's like a spiritual practice, almost.
And I imagine that right now is probably a kind of a meditative or maybe just moment riddled with anxiety, because if you're just tuning in, we are waiting for the votes, the jury votes, to be revealed, and it is a moment of great tension for the competitors, but anticipation for the audience. Because I think by this point, even after the first round, people have their favorites. They want to hear them play again. We're just, yeah, we want to hear everybody again.
Well, let's talk about what that feels like. You both have been there. And what does it feel like to be waiting?
I mean, honestly, at a certain point, it's just surrender because you have no control. And it's different if you're happy with how you played and if you're unhappy. Because in a sense, if you're happy with how you played and you don't advance, of course you're disappointed because you felt like, wow, I'm proud of how I played. But you can accept that, you know, it's subjective, but at least I can take that experience away with me. But if you're disappointed and whether or not you advance, I mean, I suppose it can give you some motivation to sort of approach it differently in the next round. But then if you're disappointed and rejected, you know, it's just a disappointing experience because so much hard work goes into it. And it's such a psychological game. And I don't envy the position of any of them. And it takes so much sort of stamina and self-belief, not only physical but mental, to get to the end of this competition and to not be like totally exhausted and overwhelmed.
What reminds me of this topic we haven't even gotten into is nerves. I'll be making a whole vignette about that next week because that is a topic on everyone's mind. And universal comment afterwards is relief. They've put their whole, I'd say like a wedding or something, their whole life is like steering towards this moment of their performance here at the preliminary round, and then it's done and it's like, oh, now what? But it's, oh, I can take a breath, and I hope they all should. I believe they all should feel really great about how they performed, but it's like they can't even process it after how they performed. It's more of a like, oh, it's done. I can breathe again.
Greg, were you more nervous in a competition setting than IRL, as I like to call it?
My nerves hit me in weird ways. Sometimes when I least expect it, and sometimes not at all when it ought to. It's something about the air, the piano, the audience, and it sometimes goes away and sometimes it doesn't. I have at this point learned that it's scarier to go on alone than it is with you. You're so vulnerable by yourself.
And exposed.
It's so surprising. You know, there was actually the very first contestant. He commented. Schwanchang. Yeah, he commented on how he was so nervous his fingers actually went numb.
Oh my gosh. But he chose that first slot, so you know what I mean? At the draw party, he was like, I'm going first.
I'm telling you, getting it over.
Get it over with, right?
Oh my gosh.
And
so scary.
Some of them appear so poised on stage, but when they talk about the turmoil within, you know, it's...
Poker face.
Yeah. Exactly.
Haven't we all heard that from people, though? You know, you come off stage and you say, I was so scared, and people say, really, you looked so relaxed on the stage. How do nerves hit you?
For me, it's about preparation. If I'm prepared, then I actually love being on stage because it's a celebration. You're sharing and connecting with the music and with the audience. So if the preparation is there, then great. But I have a very consistent anxiety dream, and that is that I'm not prepared and that I'm sometimes playing the first violin part on violin in the Brahms quintet.
And you don't play violin.
Exactly. And so it's just a very symbolic, I think every musician, especially the older we get and we are balancing personal lives with our professional lives, I can't practice 10 hours. I can't even practice 4 hours. You know what I mean? So you have to sort of be very canny about, okay, what am I programming? What do I have the capacity for? And what can I do that will do a piece justice? Because you don't always want to be scrambling. It's a terrible feeling.
Are we ever competing with younger versions of ourselves? Do you think any of our older competitors are competing with younger versions of themselves? That's such a yardstick for us sometimes. We want to all play like we did when we were 18. It's biology.
It's funny. In some ways, like I feel like, maybe I objectively peaked like in my 20s or something, but I feel like now...
I play much better now.
Yeah, and it's sort of like we're able to access parts of the music. We have a deeper insight and an understanding of not only music but life. And maybe the perfection is, you know, it's less accurate or whatever, or our fingers don't move as fast. But I would argue that, I mean, I love seeing artists that, you know, they've lived life. And there's gravitas to what they offer instead of just the virtuosity.
I want to come back to this, but just to let all of you watching know, the announcements are ready to go and the jury is on the way back into the theater. But this was good. This was really good. Let's go back to that for just a minute. I want to talk about that sort of growth as an artist and what these young people can expect as they enter their 30s and beyond.
40s. Good evening. Can you hear me now? Okay. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. The time has come. Let's find out who will be moving on to the quarterfinals of the 17th Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. Here to make the announcement are Jeff King, Cliburn Chairman of the Board, Jacques Marquis, Cliburn President and CEO, and Paul Lewis, Chairman of the Cliburn Jury. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff King.
Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Directors, let me also add our welcome to this announcement of the quarterfinals of the 17th Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. We have all enjoyed an unforgettable 3 days of new friends and wonderful music, and we've sold out of several items in our gift shop. But don't worry, it's all for sale online. This preliminary stage of the competition has been so special because we have been blessed to experience all 28 of these brilliant young artists, each of whom has touched our hearts with the grace and beauty of their craft. And we are so grateful for every one of you for being here. Thank you. And to our home hosts, we know your stomachs are just as twisted up as your house guests are right now, so we will tarry no more. It is my pleasure now to introduce Jacques Marquis, President and CEO of the Cliburn, for our program this evening.
First, thank you will be to the candidates, and I will ask them to stand up, acknowledge them, and give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to the audience. It makes such a big difference to have an audience to play for. And they kind of forget about the jury. Talking about the jury, I would like to thank Gabriela Montero for Rachtime. We enjoyed 28 times Rachtime. Thank you to the jury members. They're all there, and they are, as I love, dedicated, engaged, and completely to the service of the music and the young artists. And thank you so much for your time and dedication. Please now welcome Paul Lewis, Chairman of the jury, for the results.
Good evening, everyone. I know there's only one thing you really want to hear from me. And before we get into that, I promise I'll be very brief, because I just have to say the level of commitment and dedication that we've witnessed over the last 3 days from all 28 pianists that we've been privileged to listen to has been nothing short of extraordinary. So a heartfelt thank you from us all for sharing what you've shared with us in the past 3 days. Thank you so much. And thanks for making our job a terribly difficult one. But here we go. The 18 pianists that we'll hear in the quarterfinal round, and I'll announce the names in random order, so the order doesn't mean anything. Please, just to remind you, when you hear your name, please do come up onto the stage. The pianists we're going to hear are Yangrui Cai, Angel Stanislav Wang, Piotr Alexievich, Xiaofu Zhu, Chae-Young Park, Yanjun Chen, hello. Evren Ozel, Elia Cecchino, Alice Burla, Aristo Sham, Vitali Starikov, Jonathan Mamora, Carter Johnson, Mikhail Kambarov. Jonas Aumiller. David Krikkoli. Shangru Du. And Philippe Linov. So once again, huge congratulations to all 28 wonderful pianists that we've heard. And and we can't wait to be back here tomorrow, 2:30, for more. Thank you. Good night.
And there we have it. Our 18 quarterfinalists have been revealed, and tomorrow the competition enters a whole new phase. We hope you'll join us at 2:30 p.m. Central Time as the first quarterfinal performances begin. Have a good night. I'm Buddy Bray.
And I'm Elizabeth Joy Rowe. Thank you for joining us for the preliminary round here at the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition, broadcasting live from Van Cliburn Concert Hall at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Good night.